Hey, Chris, your 6309 arrived. And it's here, and it's running. Some interesting stuff. Let's, by the way, if I sound kind of gluey, it's because I have terrible allergies. It's just, things aren't supposed to grow here in Colorado, and they're growing, and that's really weird and unusual, and so my allergies are going ape. Anyway, your watch. It's here. First things first, the movement, dry as a bone. There isn't a bit of lubrication that I can see anywhere, and the pivots that I can see are dirty. So it definitely, just from that, it definitely needs a service. Looking at the numbers, the good stuff, good news is that it's running relatively steadily and it's relatively clean. We have a little bit of beat error. You can see that we have two lines here. Beat error is when the balance swings more one way than the other. The tick doesn't match the talk. It's loping a little bit, but this is and you'll see this because instead of just being a single line, you're getting two lines. That indicates that the swing is more one way than the other, and that's what this number is here. 7. But that's almost nothing, and that's easy to adjust out. That's not a big deal. It's gaining a ton of time, but like the beat error, that doesn't really matter. It can be adjusted out once the servicing is done, and you can see it's gaining a lot of time this way. This is the number that matters. Amplitude, 162 is incredibly low. It's barely running, and it's just not particularly happy. But the dirty pivots and the lack of lubrication will certainly mean that the watch does not run particularly well. The only functional thing I'm seeing that's going to need some remediation is a typical problem for these, is your mainspring barrel. I can move that pretty well. The lower pivot, this right here, this axle, this screws into the axle that the mainspring barrel rotates on. That axle is called the arbor. The lower port for the arbor in the main plate in these generation of movements doesn't even have a bushing in it. It just sits in a hole in the main plate. And then there's a lot of torque on this mainspring. And so as that torque pushes, it pushes the barrel starts twisting sideways, and it starts widening that hole into an oval, and the whole barrel can then move back and forth. And I've got to do some remediation to repair that, because it's going to suck up all kinds of power, and it's going to be adding shear to the gear train, and it's not good. So that's definitely going to need some work, some additional work. Hang on just 1 second for me. In terms of cosmetics, the best thing is that you've got this great dial. I don't know for sure, but I would guess, based on the color of the loom with this light butter color, it's probably a 77 dial. That's when these were basically issued, and the first generation dials had the really, really super deep loom window, and they had this slightly butterish yellow loom. It's really nice. The hands are original. They've been reloomed. But the color isn't bad. And this actually is typically what 77s looked like. They had whitish hand loom and a sort of yellowish dial. And so to me, it's attractive. I certainly have replacement rotating rings that are in much better condition than this. I'm going to have to look at your click ball to see why that thing isn't clicking. So if I can repair that, I will. That's not a problem. If this were my watch, I would probably do a couple things. One, your case back is incorrect. It's for a much later model. If it were me, I would probably replace the rotating ring with one of the ones that I have here. They're original and they show wear. They're not brand new, but they're original and they would match the dial condition. They would certainly be an improvement to the watch. I would also replace the case back so that the watch itself was matching to itself. I would look for, ideally, a 77 case back. I don't think I have one that's available. I think I've got a couple of 70. I think I've got a couple of like 78, 79s that kind of thing, and those would be fine too, because they would at least match the fact that this is a Sua production, not a later Dani production, later Singapore watch. So this is the early kind and needs the early case back. So if that were me, that's probably what I would do. I'm on the fence about reluming the hands because the color's fine. I certainly can relume them, because the only thing that a collector would notice is that whatever the lume is, whatever this is that's here, it's incredibly smooth grained. In fact, it almost looks like paint, and it should actually have a grain, like a fine salt grain to it, and that's what my lume looks like. This does not look like that. I guess it's just a matter of what you really want to do. Your crown is really, really super duper worn. I can still make it work. It's just a matter of whether or not you want the crown to be replaced. Again, I don't have new crowns, but I have original crowns that are much better than yours. And so that's something else that you need to think about, whether you want that to happen. So if it were my watch, I would update and change the pieces that are standing out as wrong, but I would use used original parts to basically make this watch look like it should have looked if these things had never been done to it. I would use a good original crown. I would use a good original rotating ring with a better insert than this that still showed some wear. I would probably relume these hands with the correct grainier lume that it should be, and I would change out the case back, and I would service the entire movement, and I'd put in all new seals. It's up to you whether you want to do all that stuff or not. You let me know, because we can make it happen. Okay, bye-bye.